Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. His name is Hans Utter, Utter. We spoke earlier this month about a fascinating subject, so this will be a part two. The title for the show is MKULTRA for the Masses, Culture, Creation, and Control in the 60s. And it was very well received. Some people know his name from his work with Jan Irvin on Gnostic Media, and some people were introduced to him, but he knows very, very knowledgeable about the subject. So I'm delighted to have him back for part two. I got kicked off my YouTube channel, so I'll have to go back and start either a new YouTube channel, but I'm going to try to shift my show to Rockfin if people want to see it live, and try to post in advance my interviews so that people kind of get a heads up on my social media. So people, if you're on Twitter, Gab, Instagram, or something like that, you can keep kind of an eye out. I'll never go back on Facebook. So Mark Zuckerberg is a monster. So, but he has some slides. So if you are hearing this maybe on one of my podcasts, you can actually go back and watch this on Rockfin, William Ramsey. You can watch a lot of my shows, and I'll be uploading all my shows. I didn't lose anything from YouTube. I had all my shows backed up and have all my shows backed up on StreamYard, which is really a benefit. So, but all those things aside, welcome back, Hans Utter.
All right, William Ramsey. I think you're one of three people in the United States that pronounce my name. It's actually Utter. You have to
Utter. Well, I will say it better last time. So Hans Utter, welcome back. And maybe for people who didn't hear our first show, maybe go into your background. I know you're a musician as well, so you're a multi-talented person, but you know a lot about the stuff we talked in the pre-show. And I was blown away by all the knowledge you have. But maybe you can just do a brief bio.
Sure. Well, I do music, by the way, and I'll just say this up front. If anybody, I'm offering a free ebook. If you PayPal donation, Hans Utter, my name at hotmail.com. Just got to do that because, yes, I am talented, but I'm also surviving here in this wonderful time to be alive in, right? It's very interesting. Yes. So, I was not, me becoming like full-time musician at a certain point, I was doing that. And that was my dream when I was younger. And then I was doing other things. So now I've been kind of cast into the whirlwind lifestyle of the sitarist, the parties, it's like you get a samosa. So it's not like being in Led Zeppelin or something. So this topic, I created this as a new presentation. So I did, bring together, and I'll give a hats off to the Chaos book, the O'Neill, because some of those were pieces that put together a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? But he got the scoop, especially. So I want to just shout out. Whether or not we even get to that point, we'll see. But I wanted to really kind of specifically focus on MKUltra, which is such a sounds like a men's cologne, MKUltra, spray it on.
It may be in the future. You never know.
But it's a very kind of jazzy name, but what does it entail? How does this tie into things that I was saying in last show? But last show was a little bit more of looking at symbolic, cultural, experiential forms. So this will be a little bit more detailed. And just going into some stuff, and we'll see how far we get. And I did make a short film. I was forced to by StreamYard because so I'm just going to be streaming that. You know what? Should I start with the first part of the film and then
sure.
dive in?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, you can take this off. You can either, I think you can just do present, share screen, and show the video file can come up, or you can pull up the file. It depends what you did prior to the show. I think it'll take an MP4.
Window. Wait, no. Okay, entire screen.
Here you go, present.
Okay, now I have screen two, but there's nothing on my screen two.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, but there's nothing there. There's no, so I can just open it up on here. Okay.
Oh, I think so. It should come up. You have to open the file first, and then put the file, not your
Okay,
desktop.
so here's the. Okay, so we'll start this. So okay, so there it is. Can you see it? Or let me drag it over.
No, I don't see the movie. Just go. Okay. There it is now. Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so it does work. Okay, I got.
Yeah, I see news in brief. There you go. Perfect. That's it.
All right. Okay, and then let me just go and play and make sure we have audio. This is like super high tech. Okay, so
just hit the play button. Let's see if I can hear it. Okay. If I can hear it, they can hear it. There you go.
There are rumors around that this is Britain's revenge for the Boston Tea Party. 3,000 screaming teenagers are at New York's Kennedy Airport to greet, you guessed it, the Beatles. This rock and roll group has taken over as the kingpins of musical appreciation among the younger element. Some music critics call their harmony unmistakably diatonic. Others say it's pandiatomic. Parents say it's just plain pandemonium. Their first meeting with the American press brings forth an interview laced with quips and humor. You'd laugh, too, with a gross of $17 million last year. New York City cops are hard-pressed protecting the Beatles at their hotel. On every side, there is hero worship that recalls the heydays of Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra. With one Beatle bedded with a sore throat, 3 of the quartet take an airing in Central Park. There was absolutely no truth to the rumor that the zoo's laughing hyena was driven underground.
Yeah, we'll keep going. Well, you know what? Let me just get to the point.
You can actually just pull that lever. Yeah, you can move it up. See that little bar on the bottom? Just grip that, and you can move to whatever part. Yeah, right there. Move it to whatever part.
You ain't no friend of mine. Don't be wrong. I don't want no other love, but baby, it's still you I'm thinking of. Don't be wrong. Don't be true, boy, it's true. I don't want no other love, but baby, it's still you I'm thinking of.
So people that are just listening to it. So, William, you want to say something about we just saw that some of that? That's basically some clips of Elvis with a bit of the frenetic screaming in the background. Now we'll just move a little bit forward.
Say, how would you look if I turned you into a puppet? First I tie the strings for your head, then strings for your hands and legs, then abracadabraca, piffly-poo, sub gum, you're all wooden. Here's a puppet boy, he's all wood from head to toe, and here's a puppet girl, she's as wooden as the boy. Here's a puppet boy, he's all wood from head to toe, and here's a puppet girl, she's as wooden as the boy. Now I'm going to pull all the strings and make you move. Little puppet, walk with your legs and arms so stiff. Oh, little puppet, walk like.
Okay, well, we'll stop sharing there. Any thoughts?
A lot. I mean, we talked in the pre-show about how some of those audiences are promoted or created, and also this kind of puppeteering theme is there from the very beginning, very early. Turn you into a wooden thing, strings in your hands and feet for the kids, right? So they're
Yeah, well, it gets much deeper. I can go into what it does, and it's a 5-minute song, right? And so let's just go ahead and let's see. Can I go to the next slide? All right.
you have to put it back in. You have to bring it back.
Okay. So first thing is Beatles arrive. So that's just that moment in history, which actually that I was talking to you earlier today. That was staged, right? So they didn't have that mass audience, but it was. You see it being put forward, right? It's there in the media, and there you can do all kinds of analysis on the language. Said their music is totally diatonic, but they have Technotronic. There's a lot of strange kind of little quips in there, right? Even the way they move. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Those are strange terms, actually, that they're actually using that back then. Interesting.
Yeah, and diatonic means what? I mean, it just means within the major scale. So no, all their music is not totally diatonic. So you know what I mean? The word doesn't mean, you know what I mean? You could say they're you know what I mean? Their music uses Western choral harmony. But anyways, so let's investigate this, I guess. So approaching it. So I gave 3 examples. We see also Elvis, right? People going frenetic, freaking out with Elvis. And I played a record, which I'll go into what it is, what it means. But Beatles arrive. So the roots of this event are older or pre-designated potentially. Okay. And this is why we get some of these connections. That's why I'm going back a little bit further. So do we lose our trust in the society? Like, what is our world, right? If this isn't accidental, you know what I mean? Everything I believe in is the Grateful Dead, Jerry, the Beatles, right? I mean, they're like bedrocks. You think these guys are cool, right? Not even these guys are cool, but what the impact or what the potentiality is. So we'll move on a little bit. So in order to understand really what the shift is, or the platform, so to speak, that I'm going to be, just outlining and trying to create a little bit of an experience of it too, right? Because it's easy to abstract it. It's easy just to say the word MKUltra. It means like, that's why I made that little quip in the beginning. It looks like it could be a men's cologne, actually. It's like, no one steal that. That's a good business idea, man. This is my $1 million moment.
I know.
But think about it. I mean, without going into or understanding and in a certain way, feeling the reality of it to a certain way, you know what I mean? And that's, offering that within the spirit, though, that of course, by understanding, by realizing, then we become free. We move on from this. But what I'm talking about affects, and this is, most of us who grew up, unless you lived in a log cabin in, Lincoln, Nebraska or something, without electricity, this stuff has been done to us to a lesser, greater extent. Everybody, right?
Agreed. So Beatles and Elvis as well, just enormous. Just every very known name. Beatles, the most influential musical group of all time, probably.
Well, let's go to one thing to bear in mind here, right? So you go back in time. Let's go back to 1920. Was it like, what do you think of from 1920? You think of all these great scientists. You think of right? I mean, or 1890 or whatever. And then of course they have these great composers, Beethoven, etc. But you look at someone, okay, Beethoven, but that's a different level, right? It's a different world. And it operates in a different space. But think about how much modern culture has been influenced by these pop groups. We're not talking like, a great composer or, some, great revolutionary. Now we're talking about, things that are by nature ephemeral, but also how do they introduce and what did they do? Okay,
Right.
so mind control experimentation. So the real basis for understanding this, and I did not put in this section in the slides, which was about the effect of music on the brain, on the body, on hormones, on awareness, right? So there's we have a basic level, you could say like a generic level of conditioning, right? Which is television is more like a dream space. Okay. Music potentially and sometimes in actuality, right, will can connect, we're talking about a glandular system, talking about heart rate, we're talking about pulse, we're talking about, subcortical response, then you have influence of the frontal cortex. But what you can do essentially with music, if you choose to do so, is manipulate almost behind the scenes of the conscious mind, right? So that song we heard, A Little Puppet, I'll talk about that in a moment, but this is an example of records that are being promoted and being given all across the country, like the nap time, kindergarten, first grade, whatever, and they play these records. And so this record, well, we'll get into more detail and why this slide is relevant. So,
but your point is that the conditioning started earlier than people would have realized. That
absolutely,
towards younger people as well.
Well, here's the thing. Here's where I got it. Like O'Neill, man, that he got that one point that no one ever got. To me, no. Again, it's in my research. It's like the piece of the puzzle, and everything's clear, at least on certain trains. So this is like I said, I like. It's kind of fun to come up with new ways of looking at stuff. But then, like I said, I kind of prepared this for talking. So I'll go into some different things. I can go back to my video. I guess I just put this together right before the show. So
but I think your point is that Pavlov, Luria, Platonov, starting, I think Pavlov died in 35, 36. So he would already done all that initial conditioning that future behavioral psychologists or psychiatrists would build on, right? Conditioned. You hear the bell, you start slobbering for the food. You know that these things are coming. Right?
Yeah, and just to go a little bit more details, so let's shift gears to talk about mind control, or this idea of regimenting, controlling, experimenting, deploying technology in the state to change the human mind in a very, you think about torturing a prisoner to get them to confess, right? That's not really mind control, right? Mind control is you can utilize these paradigms of torture, but is much more insidious and actually, can even be much worse. Anyways,
yes, it's much more insidious. Yeah.
So
you'd almost prefer to be tortured physically and get away with it than the kind of insidious natures of things like this puppet song or something like that.
Yeah,
where you don't even know you're being conditioned or manipulated.
No, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, they don't know, like, you listen to that puppet song, it's just a happy puppet song about a doll, but it's not really. It's about them conditioning the kid to be a susceptible subject, right? Later on.
Well, and that's the thing. We go to the analysis of that song, the beats per minute, the specific frequencies, like 82 beats per minute, aligning with, the heart rate of that age group. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll get into that later. But anyways, so a lot of this stuff. So Soviet Union really was a lot of this really intense knowledge and research. It's and even Luria, was a very prominent high level neuroscientist. These guys aren't just like mad scientists. They're very studied. But anyways, there's a lot of research into time. We could call metronomic driving. Metronomic division of time, experience of time, specific rhythms, how they influence what they do, right? So the whole thing with like Pavlov dog salivating, that's like the cover story for the actual types of experimentation we're going on. I actually got I have a video, maybe I'll show, of an actual Soviet military level, film, right? That was like, it was CIA classified. It's a little bit weird, but I have some stuff to show, demonstrate this. But anyways, so metronomic time, photic means photic driving. So like light and frequencies, and then, the induction of what was called at the time artificial neurosis induction, which is making people insane, which is making fundamental behaviors change, right? That's the thing. We were talking about changing fundamental levels of behavior, of identity. And as I was saying, with the music, this possible to do this. This is beyond, this is not in your conscious mind. You could talk to a therapist all day. If something, with bound in other types of situations in your life, whatever is in your hormonal system, it's in your, it's basically, it's patterns of movements. Yeah, it's your body's doing it. You're doing it to yourself, but it's not, you can't access that with your normal day-to-day awareness, right? And you won't even know what's driving you. And so here's a quote. So one of the things they described in the Soviet literature, and it's called nerve jamming. Nerve jamming, right? So nerve jamming, which is, it sounds like jamming, like Bob Marley, we be jamming, but we're talking about arousal, your sort of awaken and your suppression, and getting these two types of nervous system operations to basically work counter to each other based on stimulus or work in certain things. Anyways, so this is a quote. This is talking about the rites of ISIS, some of these things that influenced the 60s counterculture, and some of these things. A rite of ISIS. In these dances, the beating of drums and the rhythm of music and repetitive movements were helped by hallucinatory substances like hashish or mezcal. These were consumed as adjuvants to create the trance and the hallucinations that were taken to be the visitation of the god. The drugs were sacred and their knowledge was limited to the initiated, possibly because they have the illusion of satisfied desire and allowed the inmost feelings to escape. These rites acquired during their execution a frenzied character that is conspicuous in certain spells. Retreat, raise, crushing thy head, slashing thy face, dividing thy head, crushing it in his hands. Thy bones are scattered, thy limbs are cut to pieces. Okay. So
they knew that. I mean, they just knew that this stuff was happening even before, what was MKUltra put together, 53. So these studies and these ecstatic states where they were studying those, that could really go back in time. So the 60s and stuff were really rites of ISIS, rites of the Eleusinian mysteries, things like that.
No, of course, the rites of ISIS, we're talking, 1000 BC. You know what I mean? So it's not like this stuff was created whole cloth, right? I mean,
right.
It's you have these things, but also you have, say, for example, the attitude and look of the rock stars. What is it? It's Romantic era poets. You know what I mean?
Right.
Shelley, Byron. You know what I mean? It could just easily been punks. Look at these different music movements, right? Punks, etc.
It's an old theme. What's the Latino theme? The desperado. What's the word for the guy who travels around and plays music? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, run! I should know that. We could stop the PowerPoint for now, just for a second.
Okay.
Ranchero, no, Tabasco. I don't know, man.
There's a movie about it.
Yeah, Gacho is like cowboy, but yeah, I'm sure there's. Yeah, that's actually interesting.
But I mean, it's a common archetype, right? So it's the common archetype of the kind of traveler poet, or
it's you're right. It's it's even the Renaissance. You've got your troubadours,
right.
The troubadour, right? Yeah, so they were going around singing. But okay, well, you know what? I'll just dive in with the meat, and then we'll have
Okay.
lighter stuff. So, so let's go to some actual text, describing some of the stuff. So this is about Pavlov. So just to go back a little bit. So I mentioned that we have main figures, right, for the basis of argument I'll be presenting, but the actual research that was done, right, the really important research, not only in using sound, tone, light, rays, you know what I mean, as well as stimulus response conditioning, but also with the aim of developing insanity, developing almost like a slave. But one of the main things was development just to make someone insane or controllably. You know what I mean? So in some of the experiments, you have dogs that would literally starve to death. This was not based on a bell, it's based on the photic driving with a metronome. Tick, 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 tick. That's different from a bell, right? A bell is a single sound. Anyways, so let's look a little bit at some stuff on Pavlov real quick here. So Pavlov experiment with animals and human beings made the expression conditioned reflex in their household word. He found that 3 areas of the human body could be conditioned, viz. Muscles, glands, and skin area. His famous experiments with dogs is well known. Edward Hunter, in his excellent book Brainwashing, summarizes the experiment. The central theme of the film, The Nervous System, actually, which is, I have some of these clips of this era type of film, which is pretty trippy, but anyways, of the film The Nervous System, was indicated by a scene showing a dog in harness standing on what looked like an operating table in a room full of mechanical gadgets and curious meters. What immediately attracted attention was a glass container inserted into the side of the dog's lower jaw. This was supposed to have been painless. It did not seem to annoy the dog. Unsmiling doctors busied themselves with the experiment. One held the bulbous end of a rubber tube. By squeezing it, air pressure moved, bringing a bowl of food within the reach of the canine. So they're using the graph. They're using a graph, right, to look at the saliva. So we're looking at this is not simply a response. You're looking at study of saliva, right? Someone can spit. I was actually going to do this for an experiment, music related, nothing like this, but it's a great way to catch someone's emotional state is their saliva, right? But so using the saliva, but what they did is they have light driving. Okay. So dog at first paid no attention to the light. Sometimes when the rotary table brought an empty bowl to the dog's mouth, but whatever happened, the light did not go on. No saliva fold. Routine was established. Anyways, it goes on. But basically what happened, they used light. Then they started adding different types of stimuli with no connection. A light going on off has no linkage to actual food. You think about a dog. My dog's upstairs, man. He's got food. There's no light. It's going to stop him. If he wants something, he's going to be like, you know what I mean? I could imagine it, but that's the thing, right? We're talking about is a totally different stimulus that's really subconsciously conditioning the dog. Does a dog know what a metronome is?
No.
What is it? How does a dog even experience a metronome? Right? So anyways, what he did started with the photic driving cue. Then goes on, he switched to another cue involving metronome. At one frequency you get food, one frequency you don't. Right? Get that condition. Then add the light, then start. He flipped them. The dog literally gone. Like literally becomes like insane. The dog, its mind snapped. Not its mind, what we call intellect, right? Its nervous system, its glandular system. Okay, so that's what I want to make clear. We're not just talking like Motley Crue, shout at the devil, and like the crew, like they're talking about the devil, man. It's gonna mess your head up. Well, it might, right? But what will affect you is especially exposure to certain types a very knowledgeably and scientifically constructed sound operational technologies, I would call, that are packaged in music. It's like you get a candy bar, right? So it is music, but what I'll get to is what's inside that wrapper in some instances is not just music. You're getting a lot more with what you think you're getting. So you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying, like, what I'm saying is like that on a little puppet, this is actually employing the apparatus and methodologies of these types of conditioning. Okay. Right. That is where the Beatles, where you have the young girls screaming for Elvis. The years these things were being, and they're promoted all over. And so I'll get back to that second. So let me add another layer. So I'm going to just dispense with the theory here, but I wanted to give these different things. So just to recap a bit, I showed some video clips, the Beatles arriving with a very slightly odd newsreel, international newsreel though, right? Just to show that it's being promoted. And there were actors at that airport. There was not you can even look at them. They're like, you know what I mean? There was not the freak out or riot. No one, you know what I mean? They were hired people. So anyways, and then I went to the quote about ISIS, the cult of ISIS, the rights of ISIS, the Eleusinian rights. And we'll continue. So this is Theodore Adorno, Princeton Radio Project. Behind the War of the Worlds hoax, behind huge amount of research going back to Gordon Allport in the 1930s, around the same time that the Soviets were doing more sort of individualized, and group, right? So you get 1,000 kids. He did stuff with children. I mean, there was human experimentation. That's why I wanted to highlight. So the United States, even if you're experimenting on like 1,000 kids, that's gonna just, they're going to be a little bit of pushback, probably. But anyways, Theodore Adorno, Princeton Radio Project, studying the effect of radio on consciousness, and looking at many, many different things. But yet, War of the Worlds was basically staged by the Princeton Radio Project. Okay, and I have all the proof of that. But anyways, Adorno, really the theorist of this.
Can you define what the Princeton Radio Project was?
So the Princeton Radio Project was something that was started at Princeton, obviously, right? Sort of on and off in the 30s, and I think it went until 40s. I mean, it went at least until it went, until the early 40s. And it's one of those things where you have some really big names, you have some public face, and then you have some real government high level research stuff, kind of like MKUltra type of stuff. But you have you got Kurt Lewin, like psychological topography. Gordon Allport, but talking about how what the radio was just doing as a medium, right? And so like FDR was really sort of the radio president, right? So you have to go back to that time period, and those radios were huge, right? So
right, it was everything. Pre-TV, radio was the high tech.
But has anyone seen those old radios, man? They're like a cabinet. I mean, some of these are beautiful too, right? You know what I'm talking about? They weigh like 500 pounds, man. But they're
old. Some people used to just have those as decorations of an older time. You used to be able to find these old stylized radios with real today, just super primitive technology. But that's the way it worked back then. Before there was a TV, people would gather around after dinner and listen to the radio. That was it. That was how you got the news, heard about World War II, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Super important.
But the radio was like, you never had a technology like that before, right? It was absolutely new. And so these are very ornate, like mahogany, like some of these old radios, but anyways, the radio, it changed. It was like, that became basically what they did, or like Gordon Allport book, that was like 35, I believe. Talks about how the radio becomes the father figure in the family. They'll listen to the radio. The radio, it changes the relational space, right? Oh, right. Yeah. Wow. Anyways, so I'll read this quote from Theodore Adorno.
Sorry, that's what they looked like back then. If people are watching, like these are kind of nice wooden.
because these are the transistor radios, pre-transistor radio, like the huge ones that are.
Where's the 1931? I just saw one here, like this vintage one.
Yeah.
That's what they used to look like. Yeah. I used to see those around back in the day. Now you can't even find them. But Adorno studied. I mean, from what I'm reading right now, other than this, is that he was assigned to show Tata. One guy's brain is trying to figure out the importance of the radio on the mass psychology, right?
Yeah, and Adorno is a very interesting figure because he was you know, he was a Marxist, you know, and he you know, and he also though, and the fact is he hated, at least I have some essays of his, like he looked at jazz as like he hated jazz, and so what Adorno was promoting was like atonal, like Schoenberg, like you know, very dissonant, super abstract, complex music. So you know, whatever. But he was a major theorist of this, right? Of it turning this into, you know, there's a ritual aspect, right? Was talking about before. So just to clarify the subjects I'll be touching on, just to go on it, we have the neurophysiological, we have what's called the psychological, and then we have the ritual or the inductive, right? So Theodore Adorno, quote, in an imaginary but psychologically emotion-laden domain, the listener who remembers a hit song will turn into the song's ideal subject, into the person for whom the song ideally speaks. This is really important. See that? So, at the same time, as one of the many who identify with that fictitious character, that musical I, he will feel his isolation ease as he himself feels integrated into the community of fans. Okay.
Right. That's very important. So it's like a standardizing process. So the person feels like he's with the group listening to the individualized artist, right? Becomes part of the fan base, even if he's sitting alone.
Yeah. And so what this is based on, actually, not to go too far afield, but this is Lacan. Lacan was sort of he broke off from Freud. He's much more interesting in certain ways. But Lacan talked about the inner mirror, right? So the inner mirror is actually a stage of psychological development where you basically see yourself as your parent, right? Somehow, like even, but this is supposed to end at like 3 years old. If that psychological stage is not ended, the inner mirror where you identify yourself with something outside of you, right? So the inner mirror, but it's almost like it's anyways, this is what this ties into. Okay. But so you're, you know, you identify, you remember the song, you turn into the song's ideal subject. You know, you, whether or not super consciously, like, you know, New York, I love New York, you know, like Frank Sinatra, or, you know, I don't know, rolling on a river. I'm not a vocalist, no. Dolly Parton. But think about how we identify with songs, even if for a moment, right? Okay.
Right.
So
you're transported somewhere else into the listener of the song, yeah. Into the context of the song, into the background of the song, yeah.
But you also see yourself as a singer, right? You know what I mean? So you're identified. Think about a song, Don't Fear the Reaper, right? What's that song about?
It's super occult, actually. The new one.
The base level is just we're going to kill ourselves. That's it. Like Romeo and Juliet would be like they are. Don't fear the Reaper. So it's about committing suicide. It's a really, but it is literally, but it's giving you a message to commit suicide as you identify with that subject of the song, right? So
right, but doesn't like the Reaper comes through the door and takes her away? Yeah, something like that.
Well, what I'm saying is that's there, but there's implanting of messages,
right?
Which is different. So that's what I'm saying. You have to bracket, you know, because how many songs, like, you think you know the verses, you know, I've done that before. Like, you know, I'm learning a song, you know, playing in some dive bar for pennies. You know, it's a hard life, man. It sucks. No, I will not play.
A musician's life is tough, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I don't. but the thing is that we, you like how many times I didn't know most of the lyrics of the song, right? I guarantee you find any song, you're going to find verses in there that you don't remember, right? Those are, not always that you don't remember, right? They're almost embedded, they're hidden, right? But, or they may be up front and center. But anyways, what he's talking about, so you have a fraction kind of based on some either inner psychic thing or family. The hit song now fills a gap, right? Or it's, it's there just cueing into what you are. But you feel isolated, right? You're not really yourself. It's the whole concept of self-esteem. Abraham, right? So self-esteem, that concept is, everyone says, oh, do you have high self-esteem? What is self-esteem? It's you looking at the inner mirror. Self-esteem is literally defined as how you see yourself based on how you think other people think about you. Oh, the kids at school like me, so I see myself as really good. I think the kids like me. You don't like me, F off. I don't care if you like me. But that's what self-esteem is. That's the inner mirror. That's where you become like Britney Spears, right? You're a teenage girl, lonely, you identify, but you can see it much more vigorously than just a mental identification, right? You see people that whole lives are identified, right? Even with the Beatles, man, with Jerry, anyways.
Tons of people. Yeah, they get lost in these musicians. I know people like that.
Yeah, I almost got dead. No, I'm just kidding. When I did some stuff on the Dead, people got pissed off, man. I understand, it's hitting their kind of heart, right? But anyways, so going through this, right, it's a rite of socialization. So notice the ritual aspects. Ritual is a very powerful part of, we're talking about anthropology, psychology, right? Anyways, it becomes addictive. Okay. And we can go on, but it creates this, you get this sense of isolation. You're not able to heal that. It's just like you're trying to find a great relationship, right? And you're hooking up, on dating apps, 10 times a month. And why can't I find a good relationship? You know what I mean? It's sort of analogous to that, right?
Right.
Okay. So, well, go ahead. Before I go to the next stage, I'll go back.
I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you can see that behavior, and it's encouraged because there's a lot of financial benefits of that. So people have this kind of parasocial relationship with these musical artists, which is encouraged. Fame, star mentality. It cuts across the whole celebrity culture.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead. Are there comments? I haven't even checked out.
I don't know. It's just kind of coming in on you can't really see it on this. It's not integrated into StreamYard yet because I'm off of YouTube. So,
okay.
Not really. People are just kind of commenting on. Some guy said, Carl said, true, Hans, Deadheads imagine they are identifying with many characters in the song. Very powerful.
And that's when we get to the end, like, that the song Casey Jones, right? So, and a lot of people don't know this. I knew this, but O'Neill also, see, I'm giving him credit for that magic piece. But, the LSD scene of the Happy Hippies in short order around the time of the Manson kills was morphing into a crystal meth scene, right? People don't know that. And so you have that song, Casey Jones. You think it's just like, oh, the Dead are just having fun, driving that train high on cocaine. Casey Jones, you better watch your speed, right? And I've got all these quotes in this video I made of Jerry, of all these guys literally talking about ritual, talking about all the stuff I'm saying, and them talking about it. So just to hear them from the horse's mouth, not just me saying that they're saying this, but well, cool. Yeah. So let's go ahead and I'll throw that video on here.
I never made that connection. So it's Casey Jones, you better watch your speed. He's saying it with both meanings, right? Speed and speed as in meth. Is that right?
Yeah. But it's really, see, you are Casey Jones. You're the subject of the song. You become the subject of the song. The song is on one level, you're Casey Jones. You're not Jerry singing about Casey Jones. You're Casey Jones. You know what I mean? That's that self-identification. And then you're going to be, but driving that train high on cocaine, Casey Jones, you better watch your speed. Trouble ahead, trouble behind. Trouble ahead and trouble behind. And you know, that notion just crossed my mind. Paranoia.
Right.
Paranoia induction. No, I don't know. But, and then, like, that's a great song to look at Grateful Dead lyrics, man, because these have all hidden secret lyrics in there that you don't know. Because do you know anything else of Casey Jones besides those lyrics I just said?
I'm very ignorant about Grateful Dead. It's very strange because I grew up in Palo Alto, and they were all around. Swain's Music was where Jerry Garcia played. And I mean, I have connections to them. You wouldn't believe, but I know that. I mean, I've been around in their presence. I've been to all those guys: Mickey Hart, Garcia. Who's the lead guitarist? Or no, who's the drummer? Drummer is Hart. Is that right?
No. Yeah, Mickey Hart.
Mickey Hart. Like I've been in there. I've known those guys. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't know them, but I've been around them.
I mean, have you like smoked a joint with Jerry?
No. I mean, when I was growing up, when I was after high school, I was a valet. So I was a valet at a hotel where they would stay. They would stay and take over the entire third floor. But I was kind of like, it was a smaller boutique hotel. So I would drive their cars and park their cars and then be a lackey. They never wanted to eat through the hotel restaurant. So they had tons of money. So they would pay me to go down the street and go pick up their food and deliver it and tip well, cash. And I had to pretty much crawl on my hands and knees because the entire ceiling was all pot smoke. And they didn't give a crap about anything. They treated some of these hotel rooms just like like it was their metal band or something. They would destroy it. But I think that guitarist, he had some kind of carte blanche where he would bring his girlfriend, and they had two what are the kind of like an Alaskan sled dog, and they would bring him in the hotel, and the manager of the hotel wouldn't say squat. Like if it was anybody else, they would be pissed. And they were in the penthouse, the equivalent of a penthouse suite. So they would play at Shoreline in Mountain View, and they would stay there in Palo Alto. So they did a lot of drugs, and they had that drug culture was very much evident when they stayed at that hotel. But I knew they would play at Stanford too. So it was Stanford. I can't remember where they used to play, but it was an outdoor. I can't remember the name of it offhand, but it was an outdoor kind of theater, the amphitheater at Stanford. They would play, and just the Deadheads would all show up. So people would walk over there, and I knew people who were huge Deadheads. I know people who lost their sanity being around the Grateful Dead too much too. So, but I never really assessed their lyrics. But they were always around. Like I went to Berkeley, so people were listening to the Dead there. I just never got that bug. So for better or worse, I don't know. I just was never like music wasn't for me.
Well, you're probably pretty lucky, that you didn't, because that's but that's super interesting. So I was initially I thought you actually were just hanging out with those guys, right? Like Phil Lesh, Jerry.
I was young. I was like 18 or 19 in between college. Yeah, I stayed, but I just, and that was in Northern California. I was in the mix of all that stuff was going on. A lot of my friends were psychologists and psychiatrists at Stanford. I know people who worked at SRI. I know people who did some of the dream technology, dream sleeping investigations back then, where they would put and that was kind of a thing among the Palo Alto Pali high school students. Is like, hey, did you go to the sleep program where they would hook you up and give you free food and pay you $50? Yeah, and I actually went to the kind of high end. Berkeley had its own kind of sophisticated, cutting edge kind of investigatory things. And then it's looking back, like this is the beginning of computers and this technology. It was so rudimentary. It's actually funny thinking about it this day. But like I lived on the same. I mean, I lived on the same street as Steve Jobs. I used to see him inline skate. So I would drive along with him on Foothill Expressway. So I was very I was exposed to a lot of that stuff. I mean, You have stuff you wouldn't even believe. Elon Musk, because they were all around that area. So, yeah, I don't want to talk about all that stuff. But I used to go play golf where One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where that guy was. I used to see Wolf around Palo Alto, the Kool-Aid acid test guy. So a lot of that stuff, that was just in the kind of milieu, the environment of just seeing all these people who were around. I knew a guy who was like Abraham Maslow's grandson. Like, so those are just people you just casually run across. Yeah. So computers and all that stuff was growing up in Northern California was all around. And the dead were always around. And drugs. I mean, psychedelics was very much on people's minds in Northern California for all time. And I did not get into that whole culture. A lot of other people who I was around with did.
Well, you know that the thing, like I said, you're lucky just you had more discrimination discernment. So, we'll see a bit further, but these guys are, they are intellects, right? Jerry, some of these guys, I mean, they are like, they could be talking at the World Economic Forum,
Wow. So they were that smart, huh?
Oh,
I
yeah.
know that they were
but what they're talking about is like everything we're seeing right now is what they're talking about. Induction of virtual reality, total. You won't believe when you hear that stuff. These all got.
It makes me want to just go read their lyrics. I didn't know that they were in that. They were getting inspiration or getting something from that environment, right?
Well, they didn't write their lyrics. I mean, they had a separate lyrics. They wrote no lyrics. It was Robert Hunter, the poet, who he wasn't even go. He lived in I forgot where he lived, but he didn't even really hang out with the band. He would write lyrics, and he's like, yeah, Robert Hunter. So they had a totally separate lyricist. I don't think they wrote, and he was like educated. He's like a poet. He was like I think he did some stuff too with like language, linguistics, neurolinguistics. So he had he wasn't just some, homeless Bob under the bridge. He's like, Jerry's like, hey man, here's a 40. Can you finish that song for me? All right, man. You know what I mean? Because you can see like Jerry like going under the bridge, and like, this guy, some totally obscure dude, and just he's like writing the lyrics. No, it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? It was like they got a pro, right? So their lyrics are very intricate.
Interesting. See, I didn't know that. Wake the Dead says Hunter was MKUltra, Robert Hunter. Read the song U.S. Blues. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah, Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam, how do you do? Right? It's all in there. I'm Uncle Sam. And the thing, here's the mastery, though, of Robert Hunter in his lyrics, right? He is a master lyricist in a very unique way. I mean, in that the song itself on the surface, right? It has all the great elements of a great pop song, right? And so but there's all these different layers and meanings, and this stuff is in there, but it's still as it is on the surface, it's like a polished gem, right? But there's a lot more there. A lot of the other stuff is either going to be very obvious or like really trippy, weird stuff like that band USA, whatever. But let's go back to I Am a Puppet. And now I'll put this a little bit more of a context here.
Wake the Dead. Sean knows a lot of these lyrics. Pop that bag, wave that flag. Does that sound?
Uncle Sam. Yep.
I'm Uncle Sam, hiding out in a rock and roll band.
Hiding out in a rock and roll band. Guys.
They say John Perry Barlow, is a Mormon, also wrote the lyrics too. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, Barlow. Yeah, he collaborated. It was Hunter and Barlow. But I'd say 90%. Not that Barlow dude didn't chip in or do some of he's like a TA, he's like an assistant. And someone can disagree with me. That's just my, but they're both, trained writers and, with high levels of skill and knowledge in poetry.
They're like poets. They're really just like poets then. Interesting. See, I'm not surprised. Did you know if they got writing credit, and were they copyright owners of those songs, so they got paid out from writing?
They didn't do anything. Here's the weird thing. You got Owsley, which we'll get an Owsley maybe a bit later.
Right, I'm
Owsley,
familiar with that name, yeah.
you know, military intelligence, doing all these crazy speaker array sound systems, experimental stuff. I mean, it was like, you know, military technology, whatever stuff. So, but also distributing LSD all over, dosing people, putting stuff in their water, in their drink, in their food, all over. But anyways, so the lyricists, they wrote the lyrics. The Dead just wrote the music. They would just send it in the mail, and supposedly, you know, to my knowledge, they had almost no interaction. Like he would send them, here's your manuscript, you know, make the song. I mean, and if I'm, you know, I'm almost never wrong. But
Bob Weir was the guy I couldn't remember. That's the guy who was like
Bob, no, of course.
With his dog. He was like affiliated with Bohemian Grove. Like there's a video of him talking about Bohemian Grove.
But Bob Weir was always like the nice guy in the band, right? All those other guys do stuff, but Bob's good. That's good. Bohemian Grove.
I've heard some interesting stories about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I won't say it live here, but
okay. Well, let me go ahead and play this song now.
You got to bring it back in. You got to bring.
Oh, yep. Let me do that here.
So I can put it into the thing
here.
You have to go present, share screen, or bring up the video file.
All right, share screen. All right. And here we go.
Yeah, Bob Weir was the twink. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Okay. Sean said.
Yeah.
Here's a pop. Poo. Sub.
Wait for the Pentecost. I heard something right along those lines, Sean.
So that was just a little bit of Elvis, right? Doing his, I mean, so Elvis, like, I mean, think about what Elvis did to culture and society. Massive impact. Not a minor impact, massive impact. You know?
Huge change agent, right? So before everybody was kind of buttoned down, no kind of overt sexuality like he had. So people were freaked out about Elvis too, right? He was also bringing in like African American music, so people didn't like that either too, right? All kinds of people. Yeah.
Well, you know, there's a bunch of that. You know, a lot of it. Well, we're not going to the Elvis thing just yet, but at least the guy could sing a tune. But anyways, here's a video clip. So this is from the CRG, it's a Children's Record Guild. There were many of these organizations making and manufacturing records for, you know, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, maybe up to second grade, right? And you have a nap time, and these are nap time records that were put on when the kids, you know, the lights are off, or else they have to participate, right? So. And like, for example, the Little Puppet is a nap time record, but the children if the kid is not moving, right, they're going to get in trouble. But these were all over the country. And I got some of the documentation from the HUAC House, FBI. I have some of these, I got some of these reports. You know, they literally were communist front agents that were getting funding from the Soviet Union. No question. There was no question. It was not like, oh, because a lot of that stuff is framed like, oh, they're just like these, you know, nutcases. No, I mean, there was no question, you know, absolute no question that they were getting, one or two intermediaries, but this stuff was promoted all over and put in schools and given the highest ratings, and even parents would play it at home, right? So let's go ahead and listen to this song, The Little Puppet.
I just follow up on this story of Steve Jobs inline skating. He was during his time where he got kicked out of Apple, and he had this company called Next with the black cube box computer, and he would skate with his wife, who I didn't really know at the time, blonde hair, very attractive. Turned out it was Laureen Powell Jobs is her name. But when I was in his presence, he had this very kind of easy manner for the public. When I saw him like normal, he had the most pissed off, bitter face. Like I see him kind of in the publicity stills. He looks easygoing and in control. But when I saw him, like when I was driving alongside him, he once pulled up behind me. He was pissed and intense, super intense. And his intensity does not come across in all these pictures of him, where he looks kind of composed and intellectual. And then poor Lorraine Powell Jobs shows up in these pictures with Ghislaine Maxwell, like she's on the island with her. Like, so it is interesting. Like looking back, like I just like seeing him in his kind of natural state, very different than when you saw him. Different, very intense guy, very high strung, super high strung. That's the way he looked to me.
That's an interesting sort of point, because you think of Steve Jobs. I mean, like, okay, he seems like the quintessential super chill, relaxed guy. Wears his Birkenstocks in the office, and he got rich, but he's just, he's kind of like, wow, man, it all worked out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that big, great Lebowski, not big,
right? Kind of had that airy, kind of breezy thing. That's not true, man. I found him to be very intense in his like just seeing him around. And when he was inline skating, it wasn't like he was with his couple. Like he was in front, and his wife was clearly behind him. And he was pissed. He was like pissed off. And I think that was right after he kind of got elbowed out of the head as the head of the CEO. So he hadn't come back into the Apple kind of limelight yet. But yeah, no, he was super. I was going home driving in a car. I said, "Who's this jerk tailgating me?" And in a kind of like, it was a BMW that I'd never seen. It was a convertible with a very prominent kind of pole in the back. It had to have been some kind of off-brand BMW. I'm like, who's this jerk following? And I look in my rearview mirror. It's Jobs, but he didn't have like that look. He looked like he was trying to run me over. Like when I was driving like a beater car. It was like probably my second car. I think it was like an old Toyota or something, it's just like totally cheapo throwaway car. But it's just a memory that sticks with me. I'm like, who is this jerk? Oh, it's Steve Jobs. What's he doing? But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of just being around in that environment. I think a lot of stuff, without really knowing the knowledge I have now, but I saw some of these people in their real environments. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to, we'll maybe tie into that, because the funny thing is that all that stuff, Steve Jobs, Macy conferences, cybernetics, the whole Earth, all this stuff links together very relatively closely, right? Intermesh, but because I was more like some of my family in Southern California, so I didn't have any of those. I met John Cougar Mellencamp.
That's cool.
I opened for REO Speedwagon. I guess that's about it.
Nice. I actually grew up in a house with like one of the early eugenicists. His name is Theodore Shackley. You should look him up. When I grew up there was like a nexus of these white, they were very educated white, like WASP eugenicists, and Shackley was not Shock. I think it was Shockley, not Shackley.
Shockley, yeah.
Was the white gloves. I have actually a story about Shockley and Shackley, because I actually went out for drinks with the blonde ghost's daughter when I was in DC. But yeah, Shockley, Turman, there was this kind of like thing pre-war where all these guys were full on like eugenicists. They were really the American eugenicists, and he was one of them. He was shameless. So there was kind of, actually, it's interesting because that is the environment where the Silicon Valley grew out of. Is a lot of these guys had some very interesting ideas, as long as technology, as well as kind of their racism. And there's some like interesting background, occultic background in some of these guys too. Some of these guys were like Blavatsky fans. So the tech had a kind of curious thing. I think Steve Jobs' first computer was sold for $666.
Yeah, it was 666 and 66 cents. Yeah.
So sorry, that's just an aside. Just bringing back memories being with Garcia, because Garcia was actually in person. He was very smiley. He really did smile all the time. He might have been high as a kite or whatever, but I remember him just being nice. I drove around Bob Weir's car and parked it. I remember he was listening to U2. This is like, 91? He was listening to the Joshua Tree. So he had very normal, like you would think maybe he was just listening to his own songs or something, but he had very kind of interesting, he had kind of popular music at that time in his car, CDs. It's pretty interesting.
That's just the cover, man.
No, it really was.
Just-
You could, if you didn't know the Dead, you would walk by these guys. You would they were just normal people. Yeah.
no,
I would never give my car to a valet ever again after like seeing
Yeah.
what valets did too. Yeah. No, I'd never give my car to a valet. Ever.
Well, you got, I mean,
Anyway, let's get back on it.
Let's get
I
back
think
to
we
it.
just a show of reminiscences, but
Okay.
reminiscing about living in that area. But
Oh, no problem. And like the big death thing is forthcoming. So, anyways, so the picture of this album, you can see that cover, right? Just look at that cover again. So it's a kind of a creepy cover if you look at it closely. You see how it's kind of split off. It's like the body is the torso. It's like almost like cut apart. You got that. Anyways, Children's Record Guild, absolute Soviet funded.
wow, the CRG, wow, that's
Yeah, and literally with the idea of subverting America, right? Through so there was, but promoted all over this coast. So here we go. Let's listen to a little bit more of this. I'll fast forward.
Head, little puppet, walk with your legs and arms so stiff. Oh, little puppet, walk like a funny wooden doll. Little puppet, walk with your legs and arms so stiff. Oh, little puppet, walk like a funny wooden doll. Turn your head, first to one side, then the other. Turn your head, like a funny wooden doll. Turn your head, first to one side, then the other. Turn your head, like a funny wooden doll. Lift your arms up high, lift them up and down, you drop them. Lift your arms up high like a funny wooden doll. Lift your arms up high, lift them up and down, you drop them. Lift your arms up.
Okay, well, I don't really like that song that much. So
right. There's kind of it's a strange, unpleasant sound too. That kind of whistling noise. Wow.
Well, yeah, no. So it goes on and on, right? So it's a full. I mean, I was going to write something up with it, but it's a hypnotic induction, right? And as it goes on, it gets weirder and weirder. So that, like, I mentioned that nerve jamming, right? So actually, if that's, when you're like a 4-year-old, and then, they're playing this and that whistle is like, it's like, because that literally creates like almost like a shock reflex, right? And
yes.
in the head, and then they're supposed to do this. It's like sleepy dancing. So the kids would all be supposed to dance. Let me just play. It gets weirder. Let me just go towards the end here.
Wooden doll. Drop them. Touch your toes. Keep your arms and legs.
Well, anyways, there's some stuff in there, and you notice the instrumentation is not, it's intense, right?
Yeah, it's not pleasant. It doesn't have that kind of easy tone to it. It's like abrupt,
but it's complex. It's
right.
So it's not just like whatever P.B. Herman.
Mary had a little lamb, something like that.
Well, the one thing they do, they take melodies that are familiar and change them and warp them, right? So there's a whole bunch of hypnotic commands. There's sound, cues that are kind of in the background. But again, it's a kid's record, and this is supposedly some small off-market label, Children's Record Guild, so there's orchestral percussion. There's a lot of weird instruments in there, right? It sounds like, almost like avant-garde classical a bit. So this is done for the nervous system effect along with the movement. And basically part of these records is to create a sense, that song like Satisfaction, right? It creates, if this stuff it's sort of being imprinted or programmed, right? So it creates almost like it's supposed to be a time to relax, and you get this stress thing, and also they have other songs where you're supposed to act in a certain way, like, you become something else, right? You become a robot, you become a train, you become a horse, and and these are, these are going all across America. I mean, I have analysis from actually, hypnosis guy, around the time, going through all the different, I think, all the psychological aspects. So that's there. But again, when I say psychological, it's not what I want to stress, right? It's not so much the lyrics, right? Shout at the devil. Oh my God, now I'm a Satanist. I listen to Motley Crue. No, this is position of authority. Move your head up, down, and it goes on, but with these things, and it keeps going, it keeps modulating. Every time it modulates, it gets more dissonant as they go further into a trance. So, and then there's the weird, then once the trance is there, then the weird stuff comes out. So, let me just move ahead just a little bit. So look at this foreign language.
Sounds when they sing it. Puppet jump, jump, jump. Keep your arms and legs so stiff.
Anyways, so keep your arms and legs so stiff. Jump, jump, jump. So you're getting this rigid body, right? With music that's going like that whistle thing. I mean, that's imagine you're a little kid and this is blasting out and you're supposed to have nap time. But enough a little puppet. I mean, I could go in more detail, but I think that will suffice.
It is remarkable that this stuff is even before people kind of say MKUltra is some kind of like beginning mark. It's not. There's a lot of stuff before that. Like you said, coming out of Russia. A lot of stuff, a lot of people writing about hypnosis actually, World War II, and still studying that. It just became kind of formalized through the CIA.
Yeah, that's we mentioned that today. I won't say I know the exact, because I really, as I was kind of looking into this, that's what kind of reminded me of a little bit was some of this stuff I looked into, because I can talk about stuff in the 1930s with jazz, blah blah blah, blue. So some of these different effects, but this is basically being distributed, sometimes given away, written up, and these are schools, daycares. You know what I mean? Whatever. These are, and there's like there's a whole bunch of them. But anyways, let's move on. Let's fast forward here a little bit to the 1960s, and I have some video footage. I just from just basically from the first human being, which was sort of the dawn of in 1967, and I have audio clips. I won't go through all of them, but maybe later I'll just play a few of them. But these are recordings from a 1966 acid test, right? So you go to this place. We tried to show some video clips. You can't really find the good videos, but this is an example of the audio that's being played there. Imagine, flashing lights everywhere. It doesn't. We'll just check it out. This is, so we have, you've got your generic stuff, the Dead doing their meandering, blues, it's, whatever. They're basically, they're just doing like, semi in tune blues jam rock, right? They're just almost like a frat band. But there's other stuff that are going on at these acid tests. So, and again, the background images from that. So here we go.
The butcher is back. The butcher is back. The butcher is back. The butcher is back. With a cut and a hack, the butcher is back. He's cutting up pieces and feeding them to me. The butcher is back. The butcher is back. Full of runs and blood. It's me. And it's all we're going to have to eat until we breathe nothing but nothing. Well, butcher is back. And now it's cut up nicely and packaged. Let's sell it to each other. Marinate it for about 24 straight hours and then get it out there on that barbecue pit. That'll make a real social hit. I know some fun people from Atherton. And it's all we're going to have to eat until we breathe nothing but nothing. Well, butcher is back. That's all we've got. Machinery. And if you get what we mean, the only way out of this armor is to love it, 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 love the machine, and love it, love it, love of you and me.
So
That's one of the nice things about being exiled.
anyways, so that's just one little song. I have some other ones with her, but so that's it. The LSD, happy-go-lucky, birth of the hippie era. That's the kind of music you can hear. The advanced audio production, right? It's not just some of their rock stuff. This is their stuff with we're called binaural hearing. But what's it talking about? It's talking about cannibalism. It's talking about eating human meat.
Wow.
That's what that song. It's not even a song. The butcher is back. The butcher meat. I mean, it's right. Literally a song. This is pre-serial killer. Right. And this is what all these people are tripping. It
reminded me of like you and Cameron. I did a whole show or 2-part series on Cameron's experiments, and that's what they do is get them with audio like this over and over again.
It's psychic drama. That's a great reference because that's exactly the kind of stuff. And so I guess if you want to say I'm creating an evidentiary chain, right? When I'm showing, so we have a kid's record, but supposedly created by some it's just like a ma and pa store in Chicago, what I mean? So some like homespun, folksy record label. There's a lot more involved in the composition. Yes, on the surface, if you don't listen closely, it'll just blow right by you. This is exactly what psychic driving. This is the kind of stuff they would use in psychic driving. Dichotic hearing, left, right hearing, different message in right ear, different message in left ear. That's a great point. Let me just play a little bit more of. I just have a few.
Based on the book Father, Son, and CIA, which I recommend people check out if you can find a copy of it.
So first, make this announcement that anything that I might do is entirely on my own and reflects nothing on the school. I have come in here and completely commandeered the one with the room with the wireless mic, so you can't find me no matter how you'd like to. You dirty cocks. So I think I'll just blow the mic. That's pretty good. Name a piece and I'll hit it against the microphone. You got a piece. What piece? What would you like to hear? Little hand? What? Hello? Yes, I did. I unleashed my head. Gaggle, ye guilties, while ye move. Here goes the ruling Easter. For time's first bit will drive us mad. 2 beats for a virgin sister.
So that's the butcher, I think. Wait.
It's really incredible. Yeah. Right. Isn't that the Kool-Aid acid test? Isn't that the Wolf book where he goes into all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was, I think I mentioned that last time. So, like Wolf book, yeah, he really made it. Like you think about it, like Ken Kesey, like, this is when you see the, initial footage, like how they're developing this way they're dressing, this hairstyle. You know what I mean? You just look at the Beatniks had short hair, like look like 50s, you know what I mean? So there was just, it was not just an arbitrary choice, right? The tribal, this, that, but, sorry, what was your question? Ken Kesey.
I wasn't saying just Kesey's Kool-Aid acid test was about a lot of this stuff, right? The origination of the use of acid in these public environments, right? And Hell's Angels and stuff. If I
Well, he
remember.
was like on tour, right? He was on tour with the, he was hanging out basically with, he would just happen to be there, right? The guy that wrote the right stuff just happened to be there and writing about. So he's like kind of like as far as,
about it, right?
yeah. So he's like one of those, like, he's like a super celeb, journalist guy. He's like a Hunter S. Thompson, but for like the, for the Wasp Genesis. No, I'm just kidding. No. I mean, he's like a Hunter S. Thompson for like a little bit more educated.
Yeah,
but he's
good
mainstream, But just to show you, like, some of this, like this music, if you'd never taken LSD, you got to put yourself. There really wasn't even psychedelic rock at that time.
Right.
You would hear
super cutting edge.
I mean, and people forget, and I'll just remind people that the 1950s rock and roll scene ended in 1950s. That ended. It hit a brick wall. Done. Finished. Okay, they're either dead, out of commission, in jail for marrying 14-year-olds or whatever, and they pushed like Pat Boone and easy listening. And so there was a big gap. There was a gap, right? So, okay, so we have the Beatles, but we're talking about at least 3 years, right? So Beatles, the British invasion was a reintroduction of sort of rock to America, because you had a lot of like the Arches, you had like teenage groups, you know what I mean? Novelty songs, and yeah, I'm not saying there weren't some like hero scenes, but terms of popular music, no. So let's hear another clip from the acid test, and I'll listen. He talks about the right of ISIS, one of those things. If I could find it, I guess. Well, we can look. You guys just let it run. I guess I didn't align the video. I made it pretty quick, but so what do you think? See, look at the people dancing, though. It's a little bit.
It's like the resurgence of paganism and
yeah. So you hear that high pitch? Remember, I'm a puppet. See that pitch, that high pitch.
The acid test is everywhere in this spaceship. Everywhere you are, you're all acid testing and acid tasting. Inside the confines of this inner spatial dome, you will find the acid test taking place.
I found it, and it's plugged into that little box there. Okay. Still doesn't work.
Okay. Turn the house lights on. We're going to have to mill around and reconnect plug.
Can't hear anything. Can you hear anything? Testing one.
How? This is one of the variable test problems.
Hey, Ken?
How?
These 3 microphones don't seem to be working.
They fucked up, baby.
Nothing up here is working. ISK's upon it, friends, the electronic wasteland.
How about a taste of microphone? Come on now. Hey. Keep it playing, boys. Just keep it playing, boys. You're coming through one of these. There ain't no power on the stage. Come on, just keep. No electricity on the stage. Fix it. This is the captain speaking. We have reached our first emergency, and we haven't even got by the boundaries. Well, why don't you rectify it pretty damn quick? Let's everybody put their worries and frets to mind to produce some electricity for the stage. It's about time to get it ready. Yes, because there is wires all around here plugged into.
Okay, so just the reason I played that, this is like opening, right? Or like when, so they're creating. This is like they call mise en scene, right? It's an act. It's agitating, right? They can't get the mics to work. Yet how the hell are they talking on the mics? Right. They don't have power, right? So electricity, focus your mind on your problems, on your stress, right? So, you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that things that go unnoticed, right? So that, it just seems like, oh, these goofy, zany guys are all stoned and they don't have their power working. Well, how are you talking and running all this equipment if you don't have power, dude? If you don't have power, they didn't have those, and they have like 10 microphones, and they obviously recorded it on very high-end recording gear, which did not have external batteries at that point. You know what I mean? This stuff was plugged in. But anyways, just a little bit further.
Electricity all around here. Now just reach down, everybody. Hey, man, stop your babbling in 60s.
So this is a ritual induction, right? We need electricity. Everyone, because they're bringing them into this, the thing, the space.
Phones. We need some power. Power. We need the power. The power. Anybody that can produce steady power. You got the power. Power. Come on now.
That looks like a Dead show. So the Dead hasn't started playing yet, but that's a Dead show, right?
Yeah, well, no, this is in the show. This is part of the show.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
This is I mean,
that is a Dead show, or I thought that was an acid test.
No, that were the house bands. It was a Dead show.
Okay.
Also got interested in.
Is that Frost Amphitheater? Is that at Stanford? Do you know where that is?
I think it's at one of those houses. They rig these houses up.
Yeah, they would go up into the hills above Palo Alto. They go to one of these places. I can't remember the name of it. At least that's featured in the electric Kool-Aid acid test. There was a city up there. Let's see.
Yeah. So you know what? We'll leave that video for now. I think the audio is not quite aligned, but that made some sense, right? I mean, did that?
Absolutely.
I have some other clips. Let me just play one thing of like Jerry saying something.
Seems as though
I guess my audio.
Right. Who was a friend of a cousin of a guy who worked with me. I'm a programmer now. Yeah, I'm a computer programmer.
Nice.
So this is where he talks about, I'm a computer programmer. This is mental programming, what we're doing.
Wow.
So,
what are you doing right now? I'm working as a common laborer with. Oh, you're not to the offstage, huh? Okay. Anyway, this night, us had been stolen. And stolen? Yeah, by Babs and so
okay, we'll leave that. The audio encoding is a little crappy from the film, but anyways, yeah. So let's get back to some actual meat. But feel free to chime in. It's really fascinating that you. I'll bring that PowerPoint up. You can stop the video. But you were there.
Yeah, no, I was around all that stuff. Yeah.
But I mean,
I think La Honda was the name of the city they used to go to, where they conducted the acid tests. It's above Stanford. I used to spend a lot of time at Stanford as a kid. We would go up to Trester Union, and there were all the beginnings of video games starting there. We used to do see a lot of stuff.
Did you get experimented on?
I was never experimented on. I did do an overnight sleep kind of thing once. Yeah, that was it. I knew there was a psychology professor there that I was friends with his son. But yeah, no, I would never really I never got experimented on. Maybe on the MKUltra of the society.
Yeah, maybe you did. You just don't know, man.
No, I was never. I don't have any flashbacks of anything like that.
I'm going to trigger your alter personality.
Yeah, no. Thank God, no.
Have you heard that? I had some clips. Look,
but I think that the whole thing, this whole acid, the culture jamming, culture change, social engineering is the experiment. Is that these people were led down a certain pathway that may not have been for their benefit. It was to create change, social control. So I think, what better way if you're conducting a war overseas than to have people tune in to drop out, take acid and drop out, right? Isn't that the greatest social influence? Is you just get people not to care anymore or to become hippies? Stay out of the anti-Vietnam War movement, I would say.
Well, one thing just to also bear in mind is that hippie became kind of fashionable, right? So, it's kind of like if you think of the 1920s, you have your flapper, you know what I mean? Like you have like styles, right? People go through or like identities, but if you could be someone slips LSD in your drink or whatever, and like the acid test, like people didn't even know what acid was, right? And they're just going into this environment. And I have this thing where they invocation of the great god Pan and da da da. And then in between there's just, you know, the regular kind of blues rock, frat rock. But then they've got all this crazy sound collage, tape stuff. You know what I mean? Even playing with psychological, and they had all kinds of photic driving, tons of photic driving there, all kinds of different strobe lights, this, that. Like in the beginning, we heard that one with the butcher thing. He's saying, like, I'm here, but you can't find me. I have the wireless microphone. You don't know where I'm talking from. And he's saying, you have to eat meat. You won't get nothing until your mind is nothing. You know, some weird. And remember that one thing where he started reciting almost sounds like Shakespearean poetry, right? Remember that? That kind of goes, you almost don't pay attention to it, right? So that's one of those lyric aspects. So, but back into the thing is so MKUltra. You feel free to chime in.
I'm just trying to read some of the comments. I asked the people for questions, but I can't quite figure it out. Yeah, so MKUltra ties into all this, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So, starting. Feel free to chime in. So basically, outline if you don't. I'm sure people know, but April 13th. So Alan Dulles was the guy that made the official proposal to start this amazing program. And I said, I've got like some of the documents of this, like all the different universities, but I mean, it was all over, even, you know, Ohio State University. It was a massive program with many, many different sub-projects, some of which are quite interesting, right? Especially if you read between the lines. But so 50 of America's best known colleges and universities, 15 or 20 research foundations, including Rockefeller, dozens of major hospitals, a great many prisons, mental institutions, and chemical and pharmaceutical companies such as Sandoz, who manufactured LSD.
Right.
You know, and that, you know, and we have the whole Palo Alto is really where all this started. Think about it. I mean, you know, you got Aldous Huxley, and then with Ken Kesey, but I mean, Palo Alto is kind of the center. I would say, if you're going to say an epicenter for this, you know, maybe not as dramatic as, say, you know, Los Angeles or California, but I think, wouldn't you say that this stuff kind of rolled out there, or at least was developed and designed?
There's some of it. There was a guy who was like Lindley's psychologist who was involved in this. I can't remember his name offhand, but I think he was an MKUltra doctor and friends with West and kind of networked with these characters. But there was a lot there. I mean, I've been on SRI campus. It's vast. It's like a college unto itself. So they were doing all kinds of different research, cutting edge type stuff, social control, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sleep studies, drug studies, you know, lots of high-end minds were definitely there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I won't go through all this, but yeah, 200 well-known private researchers, you know, and we go through all the different things. So examples, you know, hypnosis, electroshock treatments, LSD, marijuana, morphine, enzedrine, mescaline, seconal, atropine. So, you know, and so there's all kinds of different, you know, obviously, of these experiments in different areas. But I mean, you know, Palo Alto, I'm talking about music and counterculture related. I think Palo Alto is kind of an epicenter of that, or really important.
There's a lot of things going on there. There's no question about it. Lots of interesting things. They had connections to Berkeley. Had like an advanced school, kind of like SRI. I can't remember the name of it right now. But there was just a lot of cutting edge research going on there. There's no question about it.
What do you think of like Philip K. Dick? You ever read or checked out Philip K. Dick? Like
yeah, I just did a show on him. Yeah.
Okay, like Valis and stuff.
It was Scanner Darking and no Valis. Yeah, he was a meth head too. He was an interesting guy.
Ah, it was meth or it was meth, huh?
Yeah, it was meth. I think it was Benzedrine was his helped him write. So probably it might have just rotted his brain out. I don't know.
Well, he did see God, right? He had the pink light. There's a Philip K. Dick is kind of interesting, you know, because so many of the things he predicted, but he started like the Valis trilogy. He's talking about this rock group, but there's a vast, alive, living intelligence system, which is like some satellite that's like beaming stuff down on the earth and da. But the music stuff, he has some pretty interesting and he kind of outlined some of the stuff that was actually going on with some of the the mind control stuff in certain ways. But,
interesting. He definitely had a broad frame of reference. He was very well read, kind of understood stuff. He understood alternate realities, things like that, or things that are precursor to meta or whatever this whole thing is. Oculus. Pretty sharp guy.
yeah.
Very influential, yeah. I mean, see if I can find any questions. Please continue. Go ahead.
Okay, well, let me just a little gap here. But okay, so I'll just keep going. So, anyways, so going back, so we so MKUltra is a vast project, right? So we mentioned all that different stuff. Stanford Research Institute, so SRI, right? So involved contracts CIA to research, develop long distance mind control using radio waves, and CIA MK projects at Honeywell. A method to penetrate inside a man's mind, controls brainwaves over a long distance. Richard Helms is we have biological radio communication. Washington Post, concrete evidence that electronic mind control was a major object of study at SRI at the time. The theory was that extremely low frequency electromagnetic waves from the brain could be used to control individual subjects, sometimes called empaths, a great many who were inexplicably drawn from L. Ron Hubbard's Church of Scientology.
Which is totally full of mind control techniques. I mean, the techniques involved in Scientology are off the charts.
Well, Hubbard, man, he was all over the place, right? So naval, whatever, disarming discharge, some, whatever, fraudulent business deals, hanging out with Jack Parsons, trying, right-hand man of Aleister Crowley trying to bring the Babylon working, right? And you know what I mean? So the Babylon working, they were, that was Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist, trying to give birth or, have a woman give birth to the Whore of Babylon, basically the female Antichrist.
He made the oath of Antichrist. A lot of people don't talk about Parsons, but he really wanted to be the Antichrist. I mean, you can read his oath of Antichrist out there. Like he was in direct conflict with Christianity and Jesus, like much like Crowley, and much like Hubbard too, actually, for that matter.
I haven't heard of that oath. What is it?
Yeah, look up the oath of the Antichrist, Parsons. I mentioned in my book, Children of the Beast, but he put it in writing. Like he also had the fourth book of the Book of the Lost. He's trying to kind of solidify himself in the occult community, but yeah, he was Crowley's number one apostle. Crowley actually said that. Jack Parsons is my most important follower. Hanging out with Hubbard. And Hubbard used to fondle, according to his own son, who was with him at the beginning of Scientology. He was 48 or 50, right around a lot of this time this stuff is happening. And Hubbard knew a lot about hypnosis as well, studied all that stuff. But his son said that Hubbard would have all of Crowley's materials and fondle them and reference them, and there's a recorded speech of Hubbard talking about Crowley, and it's pretty interesting. He called himself the Great Beast. So it's all tied together, the mind control and kind of Scientology and black magic. There's definitely a nexus point between all that stuff.
Yeah, well, and Hubbard is one of those people that had really a major impact, right? There's other variants of Hubbard, like Baba Yad, this guy. Yeah, so he had this had a big mansion in Southern California, had like this cult, but they had this rock band, right? So they had the rock band that would play, and supposedly it was like not super heavy drugs involved, but so Baba Yod was like his band's interesting, right? But he was a guy was in some military background, but then he killed somebody drunk driving. Next thing you know, he becomes a guru. It's like he got punished, so he became this, Anyways, but so a lot of this is going
Was
on. But
Baba Yod, was that Father Yod? Was that the guy who ran?
Father Yod, there's like a documentary on it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've talked to one of his members of that family.
Oh, really?
Angels, yeah. Her name was sister. I can't remember her name, but I did an interview with her. One of my earliest interviews, actually. But yeah, and I saw that documentary on Yod. He liked the magic. He liked the Golden Dawn. He used to reference Golden Dawn materials. People said he had supernatural power. He was his real name, I forgot what his real name was, but he had killed like 4 people in the Pacific War, Pacific conflict. He was like a serious military guy, been in full-on hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of you see all these different groups, right, are coming out, right? You go further on, yeah, and those ties in the
Source family. I think it was called the Source family.
Source family. Okay, yeah, that was the funny thing was like after the guy is totally, of course, he has to go after the young and female devotees. The whole thing is like falling apart. People are still following him 30 years later, and didn't he die like some hella skiing accident in Hawaii or something? And
he took out one of the gliders and took it out. Didn't even know how to do it, and crashed and died. That was his way out. Oh, give me that. I'll show you how to do it. That's
like there's he really that's an example of where it appears to me, like I said, he effed up. He did he basically would have killed somebody either in a drunken brawl or drunk driving, right? And like they're running this stuff, go be a guru. You know what I mean? Because you have this, Ken Kesey, even some of the guys that are dead, are not, what you think of sort of the dissolute rock star. But anyways, going back to SRI, so we want to say U.S. Navy, CIA developed long distance mind control using radio waves, so frequencies. Princeton Radio Project. We have this, a center of this, and then with, of course, Ken Kesey, Palo Alto is where he took LSD. That's where Ken Kesey was dosed, and so Ken Kesey came directly out of Palo Alto and experiments there. So he was, one of the major, figures, really. As I mentioned, that you have the movie, and then you have electrocoiled acid tests. So Wonderful the Cuckoo's Nest, right? Is that not an iconic movie? Like,
absolutely.
People said top 20. You know what I mean? Like Ben-Hur. I don't know. Disco Godfather is one of my favorites. That's not on the list. But
interesting. Well, when I was here's another family personal story. When I was growing up, that where Kesey worked was at the Menlo Park Veterans Hospital, which was on Sand Hill Road, Page Mill Road, one of those roads right off the 101. And when we were kids, we could go there and just go onto their golf course and play for free. So we would, we were teenagers, we would be playing golf at their 9-hole golf course, right where Ken Kesey was. And we would see the subject. It looked like something from the movie. They had people on the Thorazine Shuffle. You'd see them in a line. They'd be walking around. They'd take them out and walk. We'd be playing golf and just watching them. They were all in the same white jumpsuits or white outfits right out of the freaking movie. Really incredible. So they didn't change a thing. Those, like, in their personalities, they all looked like they were on like some kind of some type of drug, some type of depressant. It was really wild. Yeah, but I used to play golf on there. They actually had back in the day, they had really nice veterans hospitals. They still kind of have one in here in Los Angeles, but the ones in Northern California, I don't think they would outfit them like they did before, because all the veterans hospitals up there had golf courses and good facilities. It's pretty interesting.
Like little estate things, they used to have them.
Yeah, like they just used to build things with much more space than they do now. But the interview that I did was with Dr. Elena Michaels. So you can look that up if people want to listen to what it was like living in the Source family. The title of the interview was Father Yod and the Source family in Los Angeles. Former member, Dr. Elena Michaels.
Was I calling him Baba Yod?
I don't remember that. I just remember his father Yod, and he's dude. He's a big guy, and then he said, "We got to start." He became a polygamist, basically.
Yeah, well, he's getting his payoff, for doing his gig, and probably he probably liked it,
They had a famous kind of restaurant here on Sunset Boulevard. So they operated out of that. And I think they showed that in the documentary, if I remember correctly. I don't think it's really there anymore, but I think the sign strangely is there, but the actual residence is not. Like that real estate is just worth a fortune now. Back in the day, I don't think it was worth as much. But yeah. Father Yod.
Yeah.
Yod Ha Hey They or something. Isn't that the original Hebrew or something? Creation.
Well, it's connected, I think, with there's some guy, Kabbalist to get his name, but it's also connected with some other things. It's kind of like a random. I mean, it's like Yoda. See, look, Father Yoda. So and there's it's like you have like different versions of deities, and there's you got like Metatron, and you get some of those other. So there's a little bit of that there, but but there's of course a lot of those things. I mean, look at Jim Jones, same thing, same template, basically, right? These are another one of these templates, and anyways, so but just going back a little bit to the Grateful Dead, I have recordings of them talking about like when people would go through the acid test, right? This is Owsley, and they had a group mind. Like their minds would be shattered, and they reformed into they had a literal hive mind, and they could communicate telepathically. And that's and so Owsley does, like I said, on some of these audio clips that I have that he goes into that. But you see, long distance, okay, biological radio communication. That's kind of what they were researching. Also, you have that, the trauma, right? The induction of trauma, right? You have all. Like MPD people, they sometimes have quote unquote psychic abilities, right? You gotta, and so there was a bit, and they had some kind of, far out things. Of course, we got Sidney Gottlieb, right? So he was like he looks like the town mayor. It's like I'd buy a car from that guy.
Yeah, no, he had a good cover. They all kind of look like that. Look at you and Cameron too.
Many pictures I got.
I mean,
John Gittner. So that guy, he looks a little more creepy. I just have Jolly West. I just have some of these major players. You're welcome to jump in. Of course, there's a lot of other people, but of course, Gottlieb was the money bags, right? Funding. He was big. What do you think? He was the president of MKUltra. Would you not say?
That's my understanding. Underneath some of the big Intel guys. He was the top of. I think he ran the different subgroups, right? I don't have to go back.
Like most of the documentation I saw, and so I'm not necessarily as far as I know, like he signed the checks. You know what I mean? He was sort of, and yeah. So I don't know if maybe there was someone above him, but to me,
there were different heads because I think at the very start it was Nelson Rockefeller really took over after World War II, and then it became the CIA, and then I think it was Allen Dulles became the big boy, and then it went to Helms. So I think it was all those types were overlooking it. Like I know Nelson Rockefeller knew a lot more about MKUltra than most of the average people think. He was there before the CIA even started, like in 1947. So they were interested in those topics before the National Security Act.
Well, what I was going to say, Gottlieb is more like the guy who's actually running things. You got Jesse Helms. These guys aren't. He's hands on, right?
No, Helms is not hands on.
No, yeah, Helms.
Yeah. No, Dulles either, right? They're not hands on. They're getting the information, and the results are coming probably to them as the heads of the CIA, but they're not on the streets. No way. Other guys were. Right? What was the guy who was in Operation Climax? What was his name?
Oh, Operation Midnight Climax.
Midnight Climax. That's right. Yeah, that was in the hate, right? So that
I know. It just jumped.
I see his face. I can't remember it right now. Midnight.
He's pretty well. He's definitely well known.
People know his name. Originally under Stanley Gottlieb, and then under George Hunter White.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. And then we can, all this stuff, this ties back into the, the distribution, and you go into, research on, these, of course there was a Society for the Study of Human Ecology, right? That was
Right.
the big front group, but there's all this stuff of, bringing in this like neo-primitive, neo-pagan looking, but also the research of, the Macy conferences. So you've got, this, the demonic hag, Margaret Mead. Okay. Well, I get sued for
Can you
that.
explain what the Macy conferences were? Because I don't think a lot of people know what that is.
Okay, so the Macy conferences, almost it behind this, we're talking about MKUltra. Macy conferences were extremely important for basically formulating a lot of what we see in the world around us today. These are very high level sort of think tanks. Originally started for conferences on cerebral inhibition, which was another word for hypnosis. But they were, okay, there's publications that came out of them, but they were very absolutely influential. Everything, the whole word, cybernetics, cybernetic system theory, and all the Esalen Institute, connected with Tavistock. So you want the real outline. If you can get the actual literature, the Macy conferences, I would say not even the public front, but sort of the theorists, maybe even on a deeper level than MKUltra was. But yeah, again, you have Bateson, you have Norbert Wiener founded, Norbert Wiener, who was a rocket scientist. So originally, it actually started before this, but the Macy conferences were cybernetics is means the steersman. It's a command and control mechanism. So originally it started out, we were working with missile technology, guided missile technology, and creating feedback loops. It was extrapolated to all of human society, the human brain, everything you can imagine. And you have many, many, many important people involved. And that, of course, then we have a great intersection from the Macy conferences to the Grateful Dead and to that whole scene, with the whole earth. And then this is where we kind of cycle back. But that's anyways, I don't know if that's a short version. But they had also all kinds of weird occult stuff. There's a Macy conferences seance they did. The Macy conferences, because Norbert Wiener, cybernetics was really, there's like a book in the 50s, Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics, right? Same time Kinsey report came out, you have the cybernetics popular book with, Norbert Wiener, cybernetic system theory is, if you want to look at operant stimulus conditioning, what I talked about in the beginning, who's the steersman, right? This, there's not just quote unquote mind control, but really, you have this research into these, primitive cultures, so to speak, quote unquote, right? So Margaret Mead, and who was a lesbian with her husband, Gregory Bateson, who was, this, sort of H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley, high level, high status British intellectual, who is known for the quote unquote double bind, the creation of schizophrenia. NLP, neuro linguistic programming, directly comes out of Gregory Bateson's work. Okay, so that's the whole NLP is directly tied with that, but many, many other things. But anyways, so they looked at cultures, trance, possession. You mentioned, I had that quote from the Rites of Isis. So they looked at this modern conditions of this occurring. She wrote this book on this island in New Guinea where she completely lied out of her ass. It was a total work of fraud. Okay, so her big book, which is like life and sexuality among the Pacific Samoan, or something like that. But basically,
It is interesting though, because I think West studied a lot of trance stuff, possessions. He was interested in different states of mind.
Oh
like
yeah,
the subtle states of mind that people were getting, and how to induce them. He was also, he was involved in inputting memories, taking memories away, false memory foundation stuff. Yeah, he was something else.
Well, me just tying her into that is that so she investigated. So she wrote this thing, but it was like around same time, like talking about they have a free love society, right? Everyone has sex with everybody else. So whether or not she committed academic fraud because she basically made up her data, but what did she do socially? What did Kinsey do with the Kinsey report? What effect?
Same thing. They were all involved in that stuff, right?
Yeah. But Mead, of course, was much more on the level of how do we manage, shape, create the type of. I'm not even sure why would you spend so much effort like fucking people up? It seems like just a lot of effort to go. I mean, there's some. That's why it almost goes into this like sort of Satanist. It almost seems like there is an occult level. I think it was MK off, and there were some occult aspects of MKUltra. But I mean, you was wondering like why would you go to all this trouble, man? But anyways, so Jolly West, so he's really central in. Oh gosh, we're almost out of time here, but Jolly West, so really central guy in this thing. I mean, this Jolly West was sort of, if you look at Gottlieb as being sort of the managing director, Jolly West was really, he's like the hands-on, you know what I mean? He's like gung-ho, and he's like, and he he didn't hold back, right? He didn't have too many scruples.
Didn't seem like it. He was not a much more complex person, I think, than people say, because he did a lot of stuff as the head of psychiatry at UCLA teaching, but still being involved in weird stuff like showing up in the JFK assassination with Ruby and saying, "Oh yeah, he's insane."
I didn't know that. So he was the one. You're kidding me?
Yeah. No, he was the one who went to Ruby and wrote a thing about Ruby and said he's functionally insane. Like he came out, he made a decision about Ruby right away. So he was Ruby's direct handler. And also involved in the Hearst kidnapping, right? So he interviewed her as well, and was heavily involved in that trial, and offered information. He offered his help, so to speak, and did a full breakdown of her psychology, and then told the court, "Hey, I got a great guy for you. I got this guy Sergeant from the UK who can come in and help." And that guy was one of the darkest dark psychologists to come in. So he's recommending this guy from the UK who did the most vicious stuff. Like he was like, it would be like the equivalent of inviting you and Cameron to get involved in that. And that was all probably an Operation Chaos type operation as well, much like Manson family, supposedly. Like that whole story about the Symbionese Liberation Army and Sing-K. It was all like a fashion story. The dude who was the head of the Sing-K, like he was in one of these like MKUltra associated prisons in the US where they knew they were doing experiments and stuff like that. Really good book is Revolution's End by Brad Shriver. Highly recommend that. There's like total revelations where like Patty Hearst knew Sing-K before he even got out of the prison, so they had that was covered up, and all of the African Americans, all the followers of Sing-K, none of them were African Americans. There's something about their sensibility. They seem to have detected that Sing-K was not what he said he was. He was always drinking like apple brandy or something like that. And the only people who fell for it or got involved with him were radical white far leftists. So really interesting story. But yeah, he was part of while West is involved in that as well. And also we talked about the pre-show, he definitely was at Haight-Ashbury studying these hippies, doing significant studies, not like him showing up, but he enlisted graduate students from Stanford and did very thorough academic papers about the hippie lifestyle and stuff like that. So he has a very interesting background. I mean, we can talk about dosing and killing the elephant. Yeah, but he was there. I mean, these guys are like he's a test case for the whole birth of the growth of psychiatry. Like he knew all this post-war stuff. I think he became the head of psychiatry at a very young age, at 29, at the University of Oklahoma. So he's obviously a brilliant guy. But he had some interesting friends. But he was fighting against Scientology. He was publicly fighting against Scientology and said he was harassed by Scientologists. So that's kind of to his credit. Like he must have known the techniques they were using, is my guess. So he's maybe it was fake. Maybe it was just a big cover for his nefarious stuff. I don't know.
I would think so, man. I mean, because I guess we're almost out of time, but just to if you look in this, and I have more evidence, or whatever, but so it was really a process of cultural. So it's almost like a real-time experiment, right? So you run this is a non-controlled environment, right? This is like an experiment in the field, so that's where it's much more advanced. And so this, with you pull some of these threads together, it becomes clear that this stuff, what I find is odd. So we can look at some of the stuff in the United Nations, mental hygiene initiatives, things like that. You can look at the New World, but the New World Order by H.G. Wells outlines some of these, the ideal endpoint, right? But how do you get to that point? And so this is what I'm saying, is that some of the theorizing of this and the actual implementation. But people like Jolly West is doing like Ewan Cameron. I mean, Ewan Cameron was this handsome, urbane Scottish guy. He was head of he was like one of the most renowned psychiatrists.
He was the head of the World Psychiatry Council or something. Like he was at the top, not even like some schlub or like some mid-range thing. He was at one point at the very top, doing the most horrific freaking experiments on people.
Yeah. And the psychic driving is, when you compare psychic driving with the Grateful Dead acid test, and then you move that into the other things, you see there's a lot of, parallels there.
And that's a good example of like Operation Midnight Climax is a known example of a real live test. So they're literally testing the subjects without their knowledge, and getting information. And George White is there drinking whatever hard alcohol. And they never actually followed up with those people. They just did them and said, okay, get the hell out of here. Like, you're done. So it's another example of these Kool-Aid acid tests and a lot of these other stuff. You don't know, like, who's at the Dead show, right, taking notes and studying what's going on, right? Like, you have no idea. Like, somebody could be there just like this. I'm a psychiatrist. I was hired by MKULTRA to see how these techniques are working, whether people are in a trance state, see how what we can implant in their brains. I don't know.
Well, if I play some of these clips, which I won't go through all that tonight, but basically, Jerry is like talking about, creating this ritual, disrupting the social fabric of town, conducting experiments. You look at, the very complex high array. Owsley was like one of the, not only the LSD manufacturer, but one of the pioneers. And, this insane, look at the insane speaker arrays, their light show. So this was like the traveling, they kept doing experiments, man. They get, distributing LSD and, doing the experiments. I mean, I'm not, at least, I'm not saying the dead themselves were not the scientists, obviously. But you listen to these guys talk, and they knew all about it. Even talking about a complete, like, where you live in a completely virtualized world. Jerry talks about going into the metaverse where you don't even have to, you never leave your house. You wear a bodysuit and your mind is completely in this computerized world. You even have sex remotely via computer, and everyone has their own language in their own head, and you can go meet another person, but you make your own music in your own language. He's talking about this as an ideal. This is with the Stuart Brand, the Whole Earth Catalog guy, talking about this. You're bringing about this paradise on Earth, that virtual reality now offers. It sounds a lot like what Meta, but like where you're locked down in a smart city. You know what I mean?
No, it's Brave New World territory. You're definitely in Brave New World, and that's probably what they were trying to do in the '60s is implement the drugging of the whole population to keep them malleable and pliable and docile, right? That's probably what they were really trying to do. Is like, how can we get these people to just do whatever we want without them really knowing it, thinking that it's all normal? It's a pretty scary thought. We are at the 2-hour mark. I got to run. Maybe we should just do version 3. If you have more,
okay, yeah. If you well,
no, I don't mind. I'm definitely interested. There's a lot of information to mine here. I mean, if you're going Gottlieb and Cameron and West, I can do some more research on my side because I did the whole thing. It was Father, Son, and CIA was the book I wrote, and his dad, his easy name to remember. He's a doctor, a psychiatrist at Stanford, Dr. Harvey Weinstein, and who there's like this Freedom of Thought Foundation, I think that he's part of, where he kind of, because it touched his life, his dad was never the same after Cameron's quote experiments unquote, that he became kind of an activist. So you can see, let me see if I can find that name. But I can bring some more to the table next week or next time we do a show.
Well, you were in this whole area, so that's pretty.
I was back in the day. Psychiatry in the CIA was his book. It's the UC Berkeley Human Rights Center. So you can see that. But it talks a lot about, and I'll put a link to that. But
were you talking about Sargent? You're talking about William Sargent, who wrote Battle for the Mind? Yes.
So West knew Sargent. West recommended Sargent for the what do you call it? SRA, Symbionese Liberation Army stuff. Yeah.
But check it out. Here's what's interesting, right? So you have William Sargent, who, you look at their legends, right? So William Sargent, The Battle for the Mind, it's a book on the threat of Soviet mind control. Yet he's actually doing this. And you have these techniques of this, this hypnotic induction stuff. And, we can get into a little, I can get all the neuroscience, but it's not just, you get someone locked, you have potential trigger patterns and things you have a big chunk of the population you can technically manipulate. And even with photic driving, with like think about how all the prevalence of all the pop songs, all the 70s, 80s music, wherever you go, right? 90s, you know what I mean? So
think about how coercive some of these magazine articles, the very back in the day, Time and Life, and how you can really get into people's brains just through those images as well. Like I remember, like during the second Iraqi war, I guess maybe it was the first, just tons of propaganda about Saddam Hussein getting into people to make them think of him as Goldstein. These manipulations that are happening. Like you can, once you learn these techniques and understand behavioral science, and it plays into everything that we just went through the last 2 years, which was totally manipulated. I got to run.
All right, man.
Hans, where's the best place for people to reach out to you?
Okay. Yeah, so you can hansutter@hotmail.com. There's an email on my website. I have mindcontrolmusic.wordpress.com. So yeah, please reach out. And I have my web designer. Hopefully didn't just run off with my money, but I should have a new website up. But I have like a number of books and other things. So
let's do another third, Doug. We can definitely set aside a couple of weeks, and then we can go through some of your additional research that we didn't get to tonight. And then I'll also look into some of my stuff. Maybe I'll play a couple things from some of the videos there was a documentary about Cameron and Weinstein and his dad that I featured on an earlier show. But thanks a lot for listening. And it's Hans Uter. I put the links to your website and your email in the show notes. But this was part 2 of MKUltra for the Masses, Culture, Creation, and Control in the 60s. Hans Utter, Utter. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, William. Have a great night.
Cool.